first flight of the orbital Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower. Discovery's 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
You are listening to the Color with Kurt radio network. Testing 1, 2, check, 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 check. This thing on? Am I on the internet? Where's my camera? There it is. Oh, my lights are off. Hold on. Let me stop the timer before it blows up. There we go. There we go. Bob Ross, is that you? Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Welcome all to a what I consider to be a very special stream today. Mr. David Finch is a lights are overrated. They are overrated. Mr. David Finch, who is he's like a Hall of Fame. I mean, he's not retired yet, but he's a Hall of Fame artist. If you guys didn't know, I've been a fan of his for a very, very long time, and he streams on Mondays, and he drew Spider-Man last week, and this is it. It's Captain Spidey. It's kind of a, I don't know, what if mashup kind of situation, and I thought it looked awesome, and so during his stream, I asked us, I'm like, hey, could I color this just for fun on my stream? Because and honestly, I didn't know if he would allow that or not. But he knew who I was, which I was really happy about, and he said yes, and he sent it over, and so I thought it'd be cool just to play around. You guys are always asking about styles and how I choose things and that kind of thing, so I thought it'd be a cool little exercise to just do a couple different versions of this and kind of see what comes out of it, and maybe we'll learn something today. Maybe this will be this will only be fun. I don't know. but anyway, but welcome everyone. I will probably I might just leave this video up on YouTube. I don't normally do that, but maybe we'll try something different today. And if you have questions at any point, feel free to ask. This is to learn something, to maybe have some fun along the way. And let me make sure I add that to my little disclaimer down here. Ask questions anytime. There we go. Does that work? Sure it does. Did I hit my deadline yesterday? Yes. Did I color 4 pages in an hour and a half or 2 hours? Yes. That's another story for another day. But yes, and thank you for your help with that very much, Jason. So the first style I guess I want to talk about, and I have we have advanced graphics here. If you'll just watch this, bam, you see that text just like pop up down there, like nobody. How about that? How about that? The internet is wonderful. So anyway, the first one we're going to talk about is what I call flat. Okay, and the other thing I want to disclaimer with this is that these are sort of, these definitions are not like in a dictionary somewhere and we've all collectively agreed as colorists that this is what they are. Some of this stuff's pretty universal. Some of it, you could ask another colorist and get a different opinion or whatever. So, but yeah, flat, which is just the colors don't have any shading. They don't have any, lighting, anything like that. They're just flat colors. And, there are books that get colored this way. It depends on the line art a lot of times, whether or not that kind of like colors that simple will actually, look good with the art. Some it looks better than others. And does Fincher know about this? No, yeah, I'm totally just rip this right off his stream here. But no, yes, he does know. And I know that for those of you, there's anybody here that's new, I'll do a little breakdown of the layers, and then we'll talk about how this is going to work. So this first layer just for me to scribble notes on to y'all maybe later. We have the inks on a transparent layer here. Okay, we have some base colors, some flats, which I'll show you in a second, and then the background, which is white. And flat coloring is, it's not like there's techniques for, it's like a coloring book. You pick the color red, you pick the color blue, you pick the striped crayon and do that one. And really, this just takes a lot of experience to telepathically tell the brush which color to put in like this. This is an advanced pro technique here. So yeah. Anyway, no. So I'm not gonna sit here and coloring book color this thing. I've already done this on the last stream. I set this up, but I do want to talk a little bit about the colors before we get into all the different rendering styles. Yes, magic. Was anyone impressed by that? Probably not. There's like one person here whose mind was blown. Everybody else was like, he knows how to use a mask. But I'll talk a little bit about these colors because even just picking these colors, because some of you guys are going to ask, well, how did you pick those colors? Why that red? Why that blue? Whatever. I'll kind of explain my color choice process too a little bit here. I tend to choose colors that are on the neutral side. When I say neutral, I kind of just mean the middle of this box, basically, okay? So I tend to start there because you can always add saturation. You can always take away saturation. It gives you a lot of flexibility. You can make things brighter. You can make things darker. And when you have, a lot of times when you have flat colors in books that are colored with no rendering at all, I've found a lot of times they tend to be on the brighter side, value-wise. They tend to be a little bit brighter, a little bit more saturated maybe. And that's because you want to make sure you're contrasting that with the line art. If the line art and the colors are too close together in value, which is really how bright or how dark things are, then you're going to end up with colors that blend into the line art instead of standing out against the line art. So if, like, for example, if the colors were, let's say, this dark, make this really dark, and let's clip that. Wrong layer. There we go. So like, but if the colors are this dark, it's like, well, those are flat colors. Why wouldn't that work? It's like, well, there's not as much contrast between the lines and the colors. And so you kind of lose a lot of that detail in the line work. And so I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep the colors a lot brighter. And I'm going to use this as a base for pretty much everything else that I'm going to do today. Is everybody with me so far? Is anybody lost? You wish you could flat that quickly? Me too, buddy. Me too. I just asked Jason. All right. But anyway, does anyone have any questions about flat colors? Like, I'm assuming if you're here that you probably have figured out how to do this part. Can you explain the methods behind the black being usually colored blue like Superman's hair? Used to be printing limitations that gray was tough. Any kind of shade of gray was tough. But I'm not going to take a lot of off-topic questions today. So I kind of want to keep this video moving on when it comes to styles and colors and that kind of stuff, just for future reference. I don't mind the question, but yes, good morning. All right. So the next style I'm going to talk about, because this one, like I said, it's not really a style. It's more of a step in the process, but I think this looks awesome just like this. I wanted to state that for the record. Like Dave's work, it's why I decided to do this video with the styles, because I realized I'm like, I could probably do anything on this and it's going to look right. So, but anyway, the next style I want to talk about is, I guess what we're going to call CEL-SHADED. And in each one of these, we're going to get like progressively more complex, I guess would be the word for it. So, hey, Kurt, how do you keep colors clean under the line art? You just set the line art to a transparent layer or put it on a multiply layer, and you can do anything you want underneath, and that'll work. Hopefully I didn't misunderstand your question, which is a possibility. But the next one I'm gonna call it CEL-SHADED, which is, to me, it's like the next step up. detail wise. And cell shaded is running off of the screen here. Cell shaded is like, if you've watched a lot of cartoons. A lot of cartoons are cell shaded, or they used to be back when they were 2D and when I was a kid. And basically you have a light side and a shadow color, and there's not really much, and there's not really like fading, and there's not really a bunch of different colors. It's just a simple light side and shadow side. Cell shading, the only shading method I'm able to do. Yeah, no, and there's nothing wrong with cell shading. I also don't want you guys to look at any of this and judge it as like less pro or more pro. Like, I know people get obsessed with like what the professional is doing, and it's like, all this is pro, it's all amateur, it doesn't matter. There's styles are not dictated by your experience level. But anyway, so let's look at this. So if we're going to start adding any sort of lighter shadows, we need to figure out a few things. We can't just start randomly throwing shadows around, okay? So let's look at his line art, and I want to look for some things that indicate where the light source is, okay? And if you're in here and you're a usual viewer of mine and you're wondering, why on earth is he going to this level of detail? It's because there are more people watching today than usual, and some that are probably here for the first time. And so I'm kind of, I apologize if some of this is too recappy for you regular folk. I see you out there. But anyway, cell shaded. So the easiest way to do this, and I think this is even how they do this in the animation world. I'm not an expert on that, but what I've got here again, like, is we've got our inks, and then he is actually on the base colors are on their own little layer, and so because of that, just for the sake of time and ease, I'm going to use a clipping mask on this, and so I'm going to put a layer above the base colors that you're seeing, and I'm just going to hit the little button here, which is a clipping mask. And that means it's a fancy way of saying that I can't go outside the lines, okay? So like if I pick a color and try to do anything, like anything I do with a selection, without a selection, it's all going to stay contained to these pixels, okay? So that's what a clipping mask does. And I'll label this cell shadows. This thing will probably have a lot of layers. Because I'm gonna try to save all of it into one big file, and then I'll upload it and figure out where it goes. A little recap, never hurt anybody. Yeah, that's true too. Do you usually render in multiple layers or one? Multiple. I used to only use one, and then I got smart or smarter. You get a lot more flexibility in editing things with more layers, and it's just become part of my process to kind of tweak things along the way. So and for this cell shaded thing, I'm going to use only just straight lines. I'm not, at this point, I don't want to use any soft edges or fading or anything like that. But let's look at these shadows here. So first off, like, arms and legs are great indicators because they're effectively cylinders, okay? And so I want to show you really quickly. So let's get on this layer so you guys can see. So like, here's his arm. And when you have, a light from the top, you're going to get shadows along the bottom. When you have light from the bottom, you're going to get shadows on the top. And, if the light's behind, you're going to get shadows in the middle. If it's in front, I guess what I'm saying. If the light was in front, then it would get shadows in the back, So cylinders are pretty easy to like wrap your head around. And so when I look at his arm, I'm looking at this line down here, and it's like, that's telling me that we know here we've got some light coming kind of from the top, and it's not behind him. It's not really, maybe in front of him a little bit, and maybe to the left. So, when you're looking at the light sources, you have three choices to make. Where is it depth-wise? Is it in front of him or behind him? And in this, we can see light on the front of his legs, the front of his arm. So like, we're leaning like it's more in front of him. And then we got to figure out, is it left or right? And, and then also figure out the other axis that's left that I haven't mentioned. So we've got up and down, left and right, and depth. So every lighting choice you make should have 3 dimensions. If you look at a page and go, oh, well, this is lights from the right, that's maybe true, but you need more information. Is it from the right in front? Is it from the right behind? Is it from the front top, front bottom? You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of choices to consider there. But in this case, this one's pretty easy because we got these heavy shadows under the belt. Again, really good kind of indications of where the light is from here. So keeping that in mind throughout this whole thingamajiggy. Does cell shading conflict with the solid blacking? No, I don't think so. Not in this case. All right, so back to our cell. So the way I'm going to do this, we're on a layer above. There's nothing else on this layer right now. And so I'm going to start with the lasso. And anywhere that I want to be in shadow, I'm going to make a selection. And I'm just going to start with his arm. And we'll cut right through this shadow here. And I'm also, some of you guys are going to wonder about how I'm doing a certain thing with my magic wand. There is a link in the description that will explain that in a little bit more depth. But basically, my flats are set as a reference layer. My wand is most of the time going to be set to refer to the reference layer. So even if I'm on this new layer with nothing on it, my wand is still going to react as if it's on the flats layer. Cool. Hopefully that didn't fry any brains. But yeah, so don't be confused by that. All right, and let's see. So, and let's go ahead and talk about shapes while we're here too, because I don't want to just start throwing shadows around. You're like, well, how did you do that? What made you think about that? So we talked about cylinders. I had someone last week ask me, they're like, I want a shading tutorial that doesn't involve basic shapes. And I'm like, pretty much everything you can break down into a basic shape. Spider-Man's head, for example. I know how I would color, a sphere, in this lighting setup. You'd have like shadows down like this, and you'd have a highlight here maybe. And that's all that I'm thinking about when I think about like this shape here, the shapes of his shoulders. These are just spheres with pieces missing. You know what I mean? And so, so I'm always thinking in terms of like this here is a sphere, and so I want to get the bottom side of that. And let's see, we'll do something like this underneath here, like his head's throwing a bit of a shadow maybe. And I'm holding down Shift to add to these selections. I don't know, something like that. Kind of jumping all over the place. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with, to make this a little bit easier, let me just start one section at a time. I don't want to overwhelm anybody. So I'm going to use this little light that Dave wrote in here as an indicator of where his head is turning. And we'll do something like this. And I'm not worried about going outside the lines at all at this point. I am just thinking about where the terminator would be between the light and shadow, basically. And I'll just find everywhere that is red that I want to put this shading on, let's say. Something like that. And maybe down here, something like that. And that's about all the red on here. So if I fill this with, I'm going to start with just a dark gray, okay? Just to show something. Now this is a normal layer right now, okay? Now I wouldn't normally leave this on normal. I would put this on something like multiply or hard light. I like hard light mode for this myself. It works just like multiply mode on colors that are darker than 50% gray, and it works just like screen mode, working just like, on anything brighter than 50% gray. So if I pick like a darker gray here and fill that, now because the clipping mask, remember, it's not going to go outside the lines, but I've got a really easy, simple shadow. Okay, this is just a darker version of whatever is there, you know. So if it's red like it was, it's taking that gray, adding to it, and darkening it. And so I can do that for every section of his costume, basically. Lasso fill is great for this style. It is. I'm not a huge fan of it because I tend to, like in this case, it's like I made a selection that I don't want to fill yet. Okay, like I want to finish up this little part. I'm going to add to it holding shift. You know, I'm going to come down here and add to this. You know, I might take away a little bit of a section using alt. You know, it's like, so I don't want my lasso to fill until I'm ready to fill it. Anyway, it's something like this. And then I'm going to hit the wand here to shrink that down, and I'll fill that with that same color. And even after you put it in, if you think like, well, that's not really what I like, or I'm not crazy about that, or whatever, you can always add, you can always take away. You know, there's a lot of ways to, you know, make this work. I'm going to shift some of this around. Whoops. And I would do this for the whole rest of the thing. So I'm going to grab this section of his arm. And I've got my wand set to intersect with the current selection. That is this little thing right over here on the wand. So that way, when I make a cut and I want to shrink it down to, you know, a certain shape, I can just hit the wand and it'll shrink it to the shape in the flats at that point. And again, let me know if that doesn't make sense. I know I'm not gonna be able to like satisfy everybody's skill level today, so I'm just gonna do the best I can. And also, I've got 5 of these styles to do, so I'm also gonna try to get, you know, we're gonna be moving. And I'm just picking all of these little sections that are on this side of the Terminator, on his legs, and keeping this pretty simple. Making a selection, fill it with color. In this case, I'm filling it with that kind of gray color. Get his abs in here. And then just because this is a big, like a totally round, perfect shape, and it's the one thing I don't want to have a hard edge on. So I'm going to just use a soft airbrush to throw some shadows over that. Because it would look weird to use a hard line on that. And let's see what else. Grabbing all this stuff. Sides of these thingamajigs, these pouches. Can't have enough pouches. One thing I dug around and found yesterday to give you guys a sense of how long I have been a Dave Finch fan and why I'm geeking out today. I went through my computer and was searching through old art, and I have like 20. I don't know. I have a bunch. I have a bunch of David Finch art, and if you look at the dates on this stuff, I want to make sure that you guys see. This is from 2006 that I've had on my computer and passing it along computer to computer for the last, I mean, and even before then. But I've been a Dave fan for a while. So anyway, what do you guys think? This works, right? All these little places that might be in shadow. There we go. All right, you could also like use like there's a like a pen, like any sort of brush that has just a hard edge on it. You could use for this. So like like for this web, I could use a pen to, because, and guess what shape the web is? It's another cylinder with extra steps, basically. Get one side of it. Now this particular 15 years, hey, I'm not kidding. So this particular style is very simple and very quick, and this is what you'll find in a lot of animation and like animes and at least the old school 2D animation. So it's simple and fast, and that's it. And it can kind of be as detailed as you want it to. It's like, even though this is just, say, these little two tones that I'm using in here right now, I could go in here and really specifically detail this even with just these two colors, so I don't want you to look at, when I say cell shaded and you see all these straight lines and think, well, that's a limitation of this and that's all there is. Like, I could come in here and like, okay, this is going to be in light and this little thing is going to be in light, and we could spend like a little extra time doing all this stuff. Pardon my throat today, by the way. But we could spend another hour going, well, maybe this little part's cut out, and maybe there's some some other little section down. You can get really detailed with just those two tones. I'm not going to do all that today because, again, like, just for the sake of time, I'm not really going to worry about it. I often find this style is a good starting point for establishing the lighting and then render more upon it. Correct. I do that very, very often. So, but anyway, so this has got us like into some kind of, it looks all right. It's just a simple cell shaded style. Now, I didn't really have a color for this shadow, okay? And I very rarely actually use a completely gray color for lighting or shadow, because all you're really getting is a lighter or darker version of your base color. So like, and I know you guys have probably you're probably aware of the idea that you need to shift your hues around when you're coloring them. So like, if I have two spheres and they're both that same red color, and with one, like, I only choose colors that are brighter and darker than what's here, and not worrying about changing saturation levels or any of that stuff. And this is not like a pretty thing. I'm just trying to make a quick point. It doesn't look bad, but it's very rare in the real world that colors only shift linearly like that, where they only get from here to here, because that would mean that the light hitting it is completely white, or either a mix of white from other colors, or gray, basically a gray, and it looks weird to us because it's just incredibly rare. Like, even if a light is, like, I have a light bulb here that's white, it's like, well, it's bouncing off of the beige on the walls and the colors of what's around, and like the overall color of the light in this room leans warm because of that, because of the ambient light. And so when you're shifting colors around, when you're rendering something, it's really just asking, it's like, well, am I leaning toward a certain lighting color? Is it leaning warmer? Is it leaning cooler? So it's like, if I go in and instead pick color with a little bit of orange in it, it's like that gives this a different feel than the other one does. Or if I choose a highlight that's got a little bit more yellow, it's just a different feeling, and it's richer, and it feels better color wise, and it's more realistic anyway. So it's not very often that I would do just a flat, completely gray like this. But that's the good thing about working on multiple layers, is if I was actually coloring this for like a book or a cover or something, and this is what I was going to do, I would want to know, well, what color should that shadow actually be? Now, this is another one of those things that I'm going to tell you realistically, you know, how that would work. And then you can also completely choose to ignore that because this is comics and, you know, realism is overrated when it comes to these kind of things. So, but anyway, instead of using gray, I'm going to instead, let's see, did I pick, what did I do here? I guess I would have to use, I can't add saturation or change the hue of a gray color, which is typically why I always use, even if I want gray, I end up using a little bit of some kind of value on it. So if I do, can I just fill that? Will that work? Hold on, I'm trying to see what I'm doing here. Did that work? Okay, yeah, that works. I had to like fill it with a different color because I forgot that again I did that with gray. And so instead of gray, I picked that. So it's just got a little bit of color in it. And what that means is you can open up, say like hue saturation, and I've got a keyboard shortcut that opens that. And so now we can saturate that color, we can shift the hue of that color, we can change how bright it is, we can change how dark it is. Like, because it's on a separate layer, I can dial all that in after the fact, you know. And sometimes I do that. Is I'll just, for the sake of time, I'll throw down a bunch of shadows and then go in after and start tweaking the colors. What I like to do is, oh wow, is that Dave? Is he in here? Oh, hey, David, how's it going, man? I like the blue chest with the right stripes. Man, this was some kind of discussion in my stream last week when I was flatting this just to get the colors in there. Like, we tried, you know, red on the scaly part, and it's like, well, the white star on red doesn't feel captain enough. And then it's like, we tried completely blue, and it was like, well, that doesn't feel very Spidey. And so you've put me into a corner here, Dave, with with this chest. So we sat there and it's like, what if it? And then somebody said, what if it was striped, like Captain is striped? And I was like, well, I think it works. We're just gonna roll with it. So, but anyway, thank you very much for letting me do this, and appreciate you stopping by, man. You, I don't know if you missed it, but I've been singing your praises of how I've been a fan of yours since high school to make you feel old. No, it's very cool. I was very happy that you even knew who I was. So, but anyway, I'm all distracted now. So, I'm not really. So, but anyway, what this allows us to do is make adjustments to that. So for the color of shadows, it's actually a lot simpler, I think, than most people think, because shadows can seem complex. But here's how the sort of it mentally math works for me, and so hopefully you guys can kind of take this with you. Is so like in this case. And this is just a pinup. We don't even have an environment. So like I wouldn't even think through all this stuff myself, but I want you guys to at least know about this. Is if we have a light hitting Spidey, then wherever that light is not hitting is creating a shadow. Okay, you with me so far? So if the main light source is not the color that is tinting the shadows, what light source is hitting the shadows? And whatever color that light source is what color your shadows are. Okay, so I think James Gurney describes it in his book as that shadows are the, like, and he uses a word like the total collective light that is hitting that shadow, whatever color that is what, you know, is what makes the shadow that color. And so, for example, if he was in the sunlight on a sunny day, what is lighting the shadows? Okay, it's not the sun, because they're in shadow. So what would light the shadows? The sky would light the shadows. Okay, and the sky is a huge light source. And so what you would get is, and let me turn that clipping layer off for just a second so that I can see what color this actually is. For a second, let's see. Let's find a blue real quick. Something like that. I don't know. Let's see. So, but now what this does, hold on, I hit the wrong button. Let's do that. There we go. So what this does is it starts leaning that red toward purple. You know, if this is red and it's getting pulled around toward this purple color, it's leaning purple. I'm not saying it's purple, but it is. That cool shadow is because of all of the light that would be like from the sky. Does that make sense at all? All right. So that's cell shading, basically. I mean, you can be as detailed or not detailed with that style as you want, getting into the weeds of, like I said, we could literally, like, you know, light the scales if we wanted to, but for the sake of time, I'm going to avoid that today. But anyway, and I also want you to notice the difference in how this one color that I use, how different it's reacting to that red and that blue. Okay? Because, give me a second. I want to show you guys something else before we move on. There's my color wheel. This is a color wheel. It's based on a James Gurney book that I like a lot. And I want to explain this real quick because I know somebody will probably want to ask about it if they're not already thinking it. Is when you have a base color, let's say his blue is, let's just say it's here, and we're hitting it with a blue light, well, it doesn't really have to go anywhere. You know, it's not going to get pulled in any strong direction. You know, it's just going to lean in whatever color that, you know, the color of the light is. But the red, if it has to go toward blue, it has a much longer path through a lot of other colors that are less saturated and, you know, not really what you would consider to be typical of blue, you know. But that's why you're getting these, like, this leaning a little bit more toward purple, and then this blue is just getting a little bit, you know, darker, but it's not having to travel around the color wheel to get there. Does that make sense at all? So that's why you get different reactions sometimes with the same colors. And thank you for your membership, John, by the way. And all the members that are here, by the way, I see y'all. Thank you very much. Subscribe, like, buttons. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, so for the next step, how are we doing on time? We're doing all right. Some of these styles get more advanced. So, but I'm gonna save this cell shadows as its own layer, and I'm just gonna turn it off so that it's not affecting the rest of this. So, so for cell shading, cell shading, you don't need to add any light. I mean, it depends. Like that's a choice you can make. So, like, and I guess let me talk about this a little bit more, I guess, because that is an important question. When I say that this is cell shading, like, this is just, you know, my version of a simple cell shaded style. You know, if I were actually doing this in a book, and this was going to be the style, there's more to think about, because you would want to separate out, like, say if you've got a metal surface, which we don't really have anything like that here, like a super chromy surface. Well, I'd say his the shield here, for example. You know, if you decide that it's like, hey, I want a little, you know, highlight on the shield from this, and you put that on there, and it's like, is this not cell shaded anymore? No, it's like it's just a simple coloring style. But as far as you want to push it. You know, there are no rules whatsoever about, it's like, well, you might want to do a little more on certain materials, because, you know, with this, it's all pretty much, you know, it's superhero fabric, whatever that stuff is. And there is some differences in the textures on this, in the surface textures on this costume, because we can see it in how he separated having these shadows on his arms. You'll notice that he didn't do any of that on this blue or on this red. It's like, does that mean there aren't any shadows? No, it just means that the way the material is reflecting is different. And so, like, I used to, every time I think of the word matte, I think about paint, you know, like M-A-T-T-E, matte. Because I used to mix paint at Kmart when I was in high school. And I know all about matte and satin and all that fun stuff. But this color blue is a flatter, like more matte surface. And so it doesn't have that huge range of value shifting going on. But his costume is meant to be a little bit more reflective, a little bit slicker. And so you'll get, you know, deeper shadows, you know, more reflections and that kind of stuff. You know, as we go forward, we'll explain some more of that kind of stuff. Why Clip Studio over Photoshop? Well, David, if you'll check the FAQ. No, I'm kidding. I used Photoshop for a very, very long time, up until about 2 or 3 years ago. And I had a bunch of people telling me, Clip is awesome, you should use it. And I would try it, and it would upset me because it wasn't exactly the same. And I couldn't, there was just things that everything about it bugged me. I got some old heads around here, I can tell you. I complained about Clip for years. But what I realized was when I started playing with it, one, the UI was completely customizable. You could change anything. I basically just use Clip now for reference layers. Like, reference layers are a massive time saver for me because, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but just real quick, like if I want you to notice that I'm on a layer above my base colors. So like if I'm doing some kind of like lasso-y style and I make some selection here, if I was working in Photoshop and I wanted to shrink this selection to his shoulders, let's say, I would have to I just got an error. Are you guys still with me? Am I still online? Testing 1, 2. Okay, Chrome has crashed. I don't know if any of this is getting out. Am I still online? Can anybody confirm or deny? I can't see the chat now anyway, so I'm going to open this thing back up and hope that I'm still streaming. Okay, wow. So I lost it, but y'all didn't lose it. Okay. Sorry about that. So, but anyway, so let's say that I made this selection and now I want to, you know, I want to just contain it to his shadow, to his shoulder. Well, I would have to go to my flats layer, you know, select that, and you know, and then it would be, I have to go back to my rendering, you know, like that's leaving the canvas twice just to change layers. And so if I do this and I have my, you know, wand set to refer to reference layers and my flat is set as my reference layer, then it will basically allow me to make selections without ever having to leave the canvas. Like I can jump down and grab my flat selections without ever, you know, leaving the canvas. And so that it saves a ton of time with layer switching. I still have to go into Photoshop at the end to create the CMYK files. The Clip just doesn't do that very well. But for me, I love reference layers and love like the customizability. Customizability, is that a word? I feel like it had too many syllables in it. But anyway, that's why I tend to use Clip more than Photoshop these days. All right, so now what? how do I work around not having CMYK in clip? I always work in RGB, even in Photoshop, and so it doesn't really matter to me, you know, where it ends up. It's like, as long as, I mean, whether you're working in CMYK or RGB, it doesn't really matter, as long as you're going to end up creating CMYK files though. So, but for me, what I end up doing is just opening the files up in Photoshop and using the CMYK preview there, and creating the TIFF files for print there. Excuse me. All right, are we ready to go forward? All right, so that questions, comments, concerns about cell shading? So this, what do we want to call this? I'm going to call this cut and grad is the old name for this. And I used to work almost exclusively in this style, and I tend to paint more these days, but I still love working with a lasso. Will this be saved in the archives later? I will. I'm probably gonna leave this one on YouTube, I think. So we'll see. I think I'm just gonna leave it up. All right, I'm gonna drag that out of the way so I don't have to worry about it anymore. And what's on that layer? Nothing. I got too many extra layers. So at this point, I want to talk about cut and grad. And cut and grad is short for cut and gradient. Okay, and it's from a the original use of this, or I don't know if it's original, but it's my understanding that, you know, when you make a selection with the lasso, that's called a cut. Okay, like you're making cuts when you're making selections with a lasso. Don't ask me where that came from. It is what it is. Somebody that's much older than me maybe can explain why that's called a cut. And so you have a cut, and then you have a gradient, or whatever. It's not, you know, it doesn't have to technically be a gradient tool, but a gradient of color, you know. And so it's a very popular style. It's kind of the most, to me, it's the most like comic booky style. Like, it can be a lot of fun. And we're going to talk about that one next. And so cut and grad is like the old image style in the early days. We used to call it color separations back then for whatever reason. That was all before my time. I'm a late bloomer colorist. I was like 30. How old was I when I started? How old am I now? Yeah, I was like 32, 33 before I really got into comics professionally. So like there's so much about the early process that I'm just like, I have to ask somebody. I have to look it up. It's all before my time. But anyway, the other thing I want to bring up here, because I know some of you guys are probably wondering about it, is about the base colors themselves. And like, and before I get into this particular style, I thought it would be interesting to maybe shift around, do a kind of a different lighting setup. I mean, and so what I'm going to do is, I know one request that I get quite a bit is to ask, well, what would you do if this was at night? You know, and they want to see what it would look like maybe as in a different lighting scenario. Now, I'm doing this sort of as a demo for the sake of this stream, like as an educational thing. Like if Dave were to actually send me this drawing and say, you know, color this, and it's gonna be a cover, and there's no background at all, and I would probably keep it simple and iconic and very much kind of like this, you know, as far as color schemes and stuff. But I do want to show you that how I can throw some different color schemes on top of this very easily and shift the colors around. So for this cut and grad style, I want to start with a different base. Okay, so let's say that it is nighttime, and he's going to be lit by like the moon or some street lights or something, you know, instead of just thinking about the sun. So excuse me. I've started combining cut and grad and painting. And yeah, like, of course, there's no, like, rules about that at all. Like, if you want to mix stuff up, like, a lot of times I will use, like, harder cuts, lasso-y type stuff for, like, metal or things that are not organic. And then, like, do the organic stuff more painty, you know? Like, you know, so again, there are no rules for this. I'm just trying to give you guys some touch points of like, this is this kind of thing, this is this kind of technique, and hopefully you can take all of this and you pick up a little bit here and a little bit there, and some idea from some other YouTuber or whatever, and you create your own thing, because that's what I did was to try to figure it out, and ended up in a mismatch of styles. But let's say that this is nighttime and it's meant to be darker, and we're going to do some kind of like colored lighting this time. So what I'm going to do is right above my base colors, I'm just going to make a slightly darker version of all these colors, and let's lean it warm. I don't want you guys to think that all the nighttime stuff has to be cool, so we'll lean it warm just because. And whoops, I meant to do that on a clipping mask. There we go. And so what this does in this mode, like, it's darkening and it's adding a color. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of saturation out of this, make it a little bit darker. And is this getting too dark? I don't think it is. What I'm looking at when I'm trying to figure out, like, and it's a question I get a lot as far as like how dark is too dark, and I printed this book and it printed like crap. What happened? I want you guys to notice something about how dark this is. Okay, and I'm just gonna throw a light on top of this real quick, just so we have a reference point. So like if this is a real, let's say this is a real bright light on here. And I've lost my chat again. I don't know why Chrome is crashing today, but let me close it out completely, and hopefully I don't lose y'all when I open it back up. Am I still here? Okay, sorry guys. Of course, today, my computer's gonna start acting weird. We're not saying anything too important. Yeah, I don't want to miss out on the chat, man. So, hold on. I'm getting information on cutting. Cut because we actually used to cut a plastic overlay on the metal plate to create highlights. Wow. You're 43, grew up in a printing press. Yeah, so we're about the same age, but you got an earlier start than me. That's fascinating. Yeah, I love where the names of stuff comes from. But anyway, so let's say like this is light and this is shadow, and you're like, okay, Spidey's really dark. But I want you to look at how dark that blue here, which is about the darkest color there is. I want you to look at how dark it actually is in the color picker. It's like right in the middle of the color picker. This isn't down here, okay? If you do this, it's not going to work, okay? And a lot of new artists, a lot of new colorists, they see this huge range here and they go, man, I've got all this cool range to use. When you start getting into this stuff, this is effectively black, okay? Like this, I don't even like, I never pick colors from down here because they're too close to the color of the inks. You're going to, and then plus it's not going to print well. It's going to look muddy and look like crap. But these are not colors that are that dark. We're implying darkness, with the context, so anyway, let me get rid of those little things there for a second. We don't need them. So let's say I'm gonna start this as a base, and I'm gonna get my lasso, and I'm gonna pick let's get like a bright blue color, maybe, just because if the shadows are warm, we'll go cooler highlights. So a lot of ways to do this. Again, I'm gonna think about this as this is basically my shadow color. This is as dark as it's going to get. And everything I'm going to add to this is going to be brighter than this. Okay. So let's say I'm going to make a similar cut around his head here. And again, what you're going to see me do is click within the selection that I'm rendering. And because of the way this is set up, check the link in the description. There's literally a line that says how I do the selection thing. And there's a link to the video. So it's a whole explanation I don't want to get into here again. But if you get confused by that, watch it. So the other thing you're going to see me do today is you'll see this disappear. This selection is going to disappear because I have a habit of hiding the marching ants, is what, at least what I used to call these things. I don't want to see them when I'm coloring. Okay, so I have a shortcut that toggles that off and on, and you can get to this through view selection border. I've got mine set to Control G, because as soon as I hide it, very often I will hit Control H to open up the hue saturation. Anyway, so this selection is here. I'm not going to hide it so you guys can see it for now. And I'm going to get just a soft round airbrush. It's not a fancy brush. And you're going to notice that I'm coloring with like the edge of the brush. Okay. I didn't like cut right through the center of it. Let me actually do this separately. I want you guys to see this because it's a very subtle thing that. So if I make a selection and I get a big brush and I cut right across that selection with this brush, there's not much in the way of fading or gradients. You know, I've got a hard edge all the way around, and a lot of people email me and message me and comment me and say, how do you get that smooth edge on your on your cuts? Like where because mine are always too harsh. They always seem to be too like this. They just cut right off. So this time I'm going to get that same big brush, but I want you guys to notice where my brush is. Okay. Like I am actually outside of the area that I'm coloring in. Okay. Like I'm just getting the edge of that little section with the brush. That's the difference, is make the brush big. Okay. That's the other thing, is if you try this with a small brush, you're like, I'm going to make a soft gradient now. It's like, well, maybe I can, maybe I can't. You know, small brushes are hard for gradients, you know, and so if you're trying that, it's doable if you're good, but it's going to be hard for a beginner. Get a big old brush, and like just get the edge of it. That's how you end up with these nice colors that fade into nothing, because it's the edge of the brush is allowing that fall off to happen. I know that's just such a simple little thing, but I know it'll help some of y'all because I've gotten that question a ton. All right. So anyway, where was I? So I'm just going to select, again, like the top of his head again. Something like this. And get back to my color. And just kind of touch this in there. And I am, I guess this might be a little old school, but I don't think Spidey's suit has plates on it. So I tend to not do that. No offense to anybody that draws those things. Do we blame Stegman for this? Do we blame Ryan Stegman for who do we blame? I forgot who we blame for giving Spidey like plates. I'm kidding about Ryan, but who did that? Who started that? who do we need to speak with? Let me talk to the manager. Do you think the gradient tool has any worth in this style? Thank you, best name I can think of, for your long-standing membership. No, nothing wrong at all. You can switch to a gradient and use that if you wanted to. So, anyway, where was I? So yeah, I'm just going around here, and again, like for the sake of time, like I could probably be a little bit more detailed than I am, but I'm going to start with like a big, soft, like kind of general pass here. Like throw a shadow maybe over there, shrink it down. And then if there's areas you want to bring out, like we'll grab a couple of these little things here. My brain is not working. Scales? Yeah, I guess these are scales. Now the other thing here that I want you guys to think about is that I'm not just selecting the what's the word? Like the middle of each one of these scales. It's like some of these that are facing the top more, grabbing more of it, and then as it goes around the side, and you're just getting maybe a little piece of it or a little lip there, and it's like, because like that's rotating, we're rotating away from the light source. So as we go down, we're seeing less and less of that stuff. And what I like to do with these kind of costumes is like throw out a few little random highlights in a few places, because it really makes it feel a little bit more organic. It's like one of those scales is maybe hitting the light just right and reflecting back, and it's not hard to do at all, but you can see like it does a really good job of making it seem like there's some texture here, and again, I'm being kind of fast with this today because I've got a lot to get through, and I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. But something like this, a little bit brighter. But you see how I grabbed those 3 or 4 little scales on his chest, and it's super subtle, but it start to feel like these things are not perfectly laid out on there. Like you get one that's kicked out to the side, and one's maybe even a little bit darker than the rest of them or something. It's like playing around with textures and things like that goes a long way to making things feel more, interesting. If I guess put it that way. Is this live? I don't know. Is it? He could be a disco ball. True. All right. But you'll also notice that like I'm using different techniques in general, for this versus the red. It's like, because I don't want it. It should feel different, So for this whole thing, I'm just gonna grab again, big soft brush to start with, and then let's see. I'm gonna kind of work with what he has here. These lines. Get rid of the rest of that. Again, a little bit of darker color. Then we get like some like real dramatic reflection here. Cool. The other thing too, I sometimes will do, especially on something like this with his, when you have like, again, like big cylindrical shapes, is to do like a subtle, like just soft cut like through the middle, because you're getting a bit of a, again, thinking in terms of cylinder, like get that broad highlight in there, and then you can always come in and cut into that more, take things away, whatever. But I'll sometimes throw that down as just to get a rough idea of the form, and then come in with the lasso and do some some different cuts or shapes or things in here. And I'm personally, I mean, people that are used to my stream know this, but I'm personally not a, did I lose that? No, there it goes. I'm not a massive fan of like, let's put a little specular highlight on every muscle in the body on the superhero. I know that's like a thing. This is probably why I'm not doing superhero books, but no, like I'm not a huge fan of that look of just, it feels like a lot to me. So I'm just kind of finding some places that look like they might need some highlights, and then soft brush over the top. You could also use a gradient tool. The first video on my channel, I think I used the gradient tool. That one that like Spidey is, this old Joe Mad Spidey drawing. But is this making sense for y'all? Is everybody with me? I know I got a lot of, I'm assuming I got a lot of people that haven't been here before, if there's 100 people in here. So, but yeah, I'm trying to find all little angles that are going to catch some highlights and just select them all. And again, I'm being kind of fast with this today because I don't have indefinite time, and I've got a book I got to do later. So, and in this case too today, I'm using kind of one color for all of this, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case either. So keep that in mind. But I don't know, you get stuff like this. I don't know that I would. I'm trying to figure out as I'm going through this what I would do, like if I was hired to color this, what I would want to do on it. And it would probably be a little bit more painty, maybe. I don't really know. I tend to lean that way these days. And I also, I think my coloring sensibilities are like sort of partially stuck in the 90s. Like I really like simple colors most of the time. But anyway, I thought maybe doing something else a little bit slightly different today would be a little bit fun. So we'll see. Justin Ponder did a lot of that. Yes, he did. Rest in peace, Justin. Justin was a huge influence on me. I mean, I got to meet him one time. I actually got to go to dinner with him one time in Seattle, and talked to him a little bit. Had questions for him. He was so nice and so kind, and answered all of my stupid questions, and it was pretty awesome. But yeah, Justin, I think. And I'm not, again, like I'm not one of those comics history guys that just knows it all. But what I know about Justin, the modern coloring, there's not a colorist today working that doesn't owe him, something, because the whole, like what became, in my opinion, like cut and grad, like comic booky coloring, like he effectively helped invent, you know what I mean? Or at least, not, maybe invent's not the right word, or popularize or whatever. So yeah, like anytime he comes up, I'm always quick to pass that credit along. With the mask being red, I wonder how the mesh point would look with the rest of the. Wonder how the mesh point would work with the rest of the bodysuit when drawn. So I don't quite understand that question. Say what now? Anyway, how are we doing on time? Hour 1:15. All right. So that's like, kind of one layer of passes on this. Any of this stuff at this point is still editable. Editable. It's not edible. It's editable is what I was trying to say. But you could, at this point, let's say that you say, well, I don't really care for like that blue on the red. Maybe it's not exactly what I want. Well, I can just grab, let's say, the red parts of the costume, open up, my hue saturation or color balance or any number of whatever, and completely change the feeling of the colors on this just by shifting that color around. And you can do this across the whole thing. It's like if I was like, well, you know what, this would be cool if it was green or purple or whatever. It's like you can see that as long as that looks cool. Green and red look good together. I can't believe it. But having this on a separate layer and not baked down into your base colors means that at any point you can change anything. And I know not everybody works that way, but I do. My pages are in flux until they're done. Like any color I put down is subject to change, and and not everybody works that way. I know colorists, Marta Gracia, for example, who's one of the best working right now. Like he tends to basically draw. I've seen his PSD files. I've got some of them. Flats, rendering, inks, maybe some special effects on top. Like that's his entire layer stack, and he's a legend. So, when you look at me and you see, well, he uses a bunch of layers and this guy doesn't, it doesn't really matter. It's whatever, whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you. What shapes do you go for when using the lasso tool for the highlights? Great question. Great question. I'm going to leave this green on here, I think, for this version. So what you're seeing in the lasso-y cuts on this, that's all based on it's a simplification of light and shadow, okay? I'm going to answer this on kind of a tangent because I know I've got a lot of people that are new here, and I want to make sure that everybody understands what's happening. Before I move on to the next thing, actually, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the dark parts on that I forgot about. There we go. The little shadow in his eye, I've missed it. Man, I'm trying to figure out how to answer your question. So let's go look at something real quick. All right. If you have a sphere, and let's make it, we'll make it white for this. Oh, that is not a round brush. Hold on. There we go. Well, that's too big. Hold on. Does anybody know why, like, one brush, the size trick wouldn't work properly? It's just the mono tool. Like, when I change the brush size, I'm holding down, what is that? Alt and the right click button, and like it's there, and I let go. Well, that time it worked because y'all were watching. Dang it, it's working now. Okay, I don't know what that was. So, like, let's say this is a sphere. So I'm going to put a clipping mask on this to make this easy. And I'm not going to use any special colors here. I'm just going to use just gray. So let's say that this is one side of... Actually, this thing needs to be darker so I can add highlights. There we go. So let's say it's gray. And so I've got a dark side here, a shadow side. We've got a light side. Let's say it's got a highlight on it. Now, if... am I crazy? Why is this? There we go. So, like, for example, if this sphere was like had like a matte finish on it, like it was kind of had a little bit of rough texture, you would get like a softer highlight, on one side of it. If it was like a really shiny, smooth, like a cue ball, you would get little tiny, specular highlights in here. So it depends on what the surface is. I'm using this as a quick example though. So like. And then we have some sort of reflected light, let's say down at the bottom. All right. So there's my pretty sphere. That is a damn good looking sphere, if I may say so. I'm just gonna say that. So what I'm doing with these cuts is I'm trying to emulate this effect by just simplifying it. And so this time, if I grab, let's see if I copy that and drag it over here and turn this back on. wait, that needs to go there. There we go. So what I'm effectively trying to do is simplify this. So I'm creating a shadow side. Whoops, shadow side. Why isn't that working? Let me merge that down. Anytime it's not working, don't worry, it's my fault. What did I do wrong here? Let's merge these down. That did that. I need to be on that layer. Okay, there we go. I'm a professional, people, I promise. So what I'm going to do is make a cut across here instead. And that's my shadow. And I might have a shape about like this for a highlight. And another shape like this for that highlight. So, like, this is a gross oversimplification, but that's all that I'm doing when I'm making these selections, is I'm trying to emulate, like I'm trying to mentally simplify this into its most basic recognizable components. You know what I mean? So this is not pretty, this is not good, I'm not saying any of that stuff, but that's effectively what I'm doing. It's like I'm trying to figure out is if the light was, you know, hitting his arm at just this angle, then, you know, what sort of shape would that light make? I mean, I realize that's like a super basic explanation of what this is, but I don't know how else to explain it. It totally looks like a 3D model. I'm impressed with my little sphere there, I gotta say. I don't always do those that well. So, anyway, and of course, like, again, just to show you, a lot of times what you'll see in comics is you'll get one kind of pass with the lights, and then you can come through with like a brighter shape for something that's like really super reflective. What color am I working with here? Green. I don't even know what color that is. And then so we get like maybe a really bright little highlight there because the shield is very shiny. If I was working on a modern, you know, Spidey book, all of these little things would also have their own little shapes, which I like old school Spidey. Let's put it that way. But yeah, so a few little specular highlights, and it makes it start to look like it's made of little chunks instead of whatever his costume is actually made out of. The left sphere makes you sad. It was a sad sphere. It really was a sad sphere. Yeah, this dude needs help. Yeah, he does need help. All right. So, questions, comments, concerns about this kind of style? Does this make sense for anybody? I'm also recording this and recording it in clip, and so I'll put all this on YouTube as a shorter video at some point too. Have you ever read Umbrella Academy? I like the style at Dave Stewart, like a bit squared, out of the lines rendering. Yeah, like Dave he's come up with so many unique styles and things that only he comes up with. Like, it's why, like, I think they should just rename everything should just become the Dave Stewart Award for coloring, and, you know, leave it at that. Anyway, well, all right. It's glad to see you guys seem to understand this a little bit. If I did want to push this more, we can go a lot further with it. You know, it's like if I wanted to say, you know, let's say I send this and David says, you know what, this is cool, but like I really want you to like render the shit out of this, then, you know, you can come in here with, you know, these little thin little highlights, and we could really make all the little specular highlights and make like every little thing look like it's super reflective and glowing, and this is something that you can do. And again, you can see now how that scaled part feels like a different type of material than everything else, and all I did was change the shape of the lassoing. You know, by the smaller and thinner that your cuts are, especially on highlights like this, it is sending a signal to the reader that these things are very, very reflective. Okay, very, very reflective. Like the smaller little highlights really make things look like they're very shiny. So David, do you like this? Oh, you guys are trying to put pressure on me. Come on now. Come on. Dave has won 90% of all Eisner Color Swords over the decades. It feels like it, but he's earned them all, though. He's a legend. Looking great. I can't believe how fast it came together. I have a lot of practice. Anyway. I just, and to me, the other thing with this that I like is like this green I kind of tripped into. I that happens a lot. Like, don't be afraid to like get locked in with a color choice on something. Like sometimes I will do something like this and then just start sliding the slider around to see like, well, what if it was this? What if it was that? Now I might not use any of this, but these are all like completely different feelings. All of these colors are giving us, you know, all these different moods, and all I'm really doing is shifting the hues around. It's like if Spidey was jumping into, you know, a fight scene with I don't know, the lizard under a sewer somewhere, it's like maybe he's lit like this. You know, you see that a lot. You know, the sewers are green and yellow and nasty, but it's like, well, but if he was, you know, flying across the middle of the sky, which he probably is here, then, you know, maybe we take out, you know, some of the color, take out some of the hue, and bring it closer into, you know, a more local color light where the light's whiter, basically. You know, so there's a lot of stuff you can do with that and just change the feel of it, and I didn't have to re-render anything. You know, so I'm allergic to re-rendering things. I don't like re-rendering, and so I try not to do it. Oh, and don't forget too, there's 2 layers of color here. You've got the color on the highlights, and you've got the color of the base that's in here. So again, we can completely change the feel of this by, let's say, if we make that back color cool. I think that's a cool color. Yeah, it's like a green color. And then shift the highlights around to a different one, you know? And so we're getting all these, like, these all look like different Instagram filters. But it gives us, again, just tons and tons of flexibility in the process. And that's why I like to use all these different layers. What brush you're using to fill in, it's a completely boring standard round airbrush. Is hard light your default for light and shadow? Yeah, to me it's a catch-all blending mode that does everything for me. It's pretty much. I mean, there's a few things I might, special effects, I might use a different mode, but even that I've gotten to the point where I almost use hard light all the time. Did you start with pencils? Yeah, like as soon as Dave finished this last Monday or whenever this was, he sent it over just the next day, I think. So I'll show you guys his what it looks like without all my crap on it. There it is. There we go. Yeah. So all I did, he sent me over a pencil drawing. I messed around with the levels a little bit, and but I love this. Like, I would buy a book that looks like this. I mean, no offense, inkers. Like, this looks fine to me. So anyway, I think that's where I left it off. So here's what I want to do. I want to save this. I'm going to put these in a folder, and I'm going to call it cut and grad. Oh, they're not in the folder. Now they are. What did I do wrong? just delete it. So let's see, we'll turn that off and drag that to the bottom. So I'm keeping all this stuff for later, and I'll make this file available to patrons, and you guys can play around with this if you want. All right, what's next on my list? So that's cut and grad. The next one I'm just gonna call Painterly. I think that's, somebody told me that was what it was called years ago, and I never argued with them. So we're gonna call it Painterly. And I do a lot of Painterly lately, and I'm saying Painterly and not Painted. Okay, I'm considering those as two different things. Painterly to me is using a brush. Kind of looks like a paintbrush, you know, like more like a digital painting. You're doing, you know, brush instead of lasso, that kind of stuff. So that is badass. Thank you. I think you're talking to me. Thank you. I really like this workflow. It's organized but without hundreds of layers. Yes. I tend to I'm big on efficiency. I'm big on not redoing things, and trying to make the process as streamlined as I possibly can. Because you got to imagine, I'm doing this 22 pages a month, times 2 or 3 books a month, times however many days there is in a year. All, like, every little move that I make, if I do it once a day, it means I do it 1,000 times a day. You know what I mean? And so I tend to work in a way that supports that, if that makes sense. So, anyway, so Painterly, let's call it. I'm going to make another layer on top, just like the rest of them. And if you're not familiar with hard light mode, I have done multiple videos about hard light mode, but really quick explanation. 50% gray, consider it your home base. That's how I look at it, just kind of in general. I always start with, gray, okay? 50% gray and hard light doesn't show up. Okay, like effectively. If I fill this with 50% gray, well, that's not even perfectly gray, but you really don't see much happening here. Okay, like that entire layer is filled with gray. It does nothing. Okay, but if you start going right, okay, adding saturation, it's going to start tinting everything toward that blue color. So let me see if I can show you that real quick. So I'll fill that. Let me clip this down to, there we go. And so as I add saturation and go across the color wheel going this way, it's just going to keep adding, blue until I'm all the way over across the wheel. It's taking the blue color, mixing it with the colors that are underneath, and I'm getting this in-between color, which is what it would look like. If you take red and shine a light blue light on it, it's going to start moving toward blue. And it's going there through purple. Okay? So like, and if you want to know why that is, here's the red. And what color did I choose? It doesn't matter. That bluish color is here. So it has to go through here on the way there. So we're heading toward that blue, and that is going to mean that all that red is getting pulled into purple. And so that's why you're getting this kind of magenta color here. And with hard light, to take this back where it was, if you go up, it brightens and adds whatever color it is that you're on, So if I choose this pink color, it is, and I am above the 50% point, it is going to turn it pink and brighten, okay? If I go below the 50% point, which is right here, it's going to add that color and darken. Okay, so this is just like multiply mode. This is just like screen mode. Okay, effectively. Okay, so I don't need any other layer modes. Like basically, so I can make things as saturated as I want, as bright as I want, as dark as I want, and any color that I want, all in one layer every time. So, you know, this is how I do it. Take it with a grain of salt. There is, and I think I gave this disclaimer earlier, but because there's 100 people watching now, I will say again, these are my ideas. Okay, you ask 10 colors, you're gonna get 10 ideas. So, anyway, I don't know how we got off on that tangent. Somebody asked me something about. Would you consider Painterly as more mixing of colors? That's probably true too. I mean, this all these definitions are, you know, a little fluid. I would say. Is using that hard light layer more effective than just changing the color balance? Yeah, it's not the same thing. Like changing the color balance would also work, I guess, but it's like I would have to create a color balance adjustment layer, put a mask on it, and then render on the mask. It's probably what I would do if I wanted to do that. It's possible. Like just about anything's possible. You know. So but anyway, going back to Painterly here. So I'm gonna pick. I'm just gonna leave these base colors these from the original. I like those a lot, and I'm gonna grab. I'm gonna grab a darker color. I'm gonna make it kind of cool. And again, just don't worry about getting like married to a certain color. Like put it down. If you don't like it, don't use it. Change the color. So I'm trying to look for something about like that. Maybe lean it purple. No. Something about like that. So and with this, same thing. I'm going to make sure that I am selecting from my flats, so I don't have to go down there. And with this, there's a couple ways to do this. Sometimes if I've got something that's mostly in shadow, I will like completely fill it and then just switch over to transparency, which in clip is just the letter C. You can see this will toggle between the color and transparency. And so you can paint it away, you know, instead of painting the shadow on, you know. I'm just kind of throw you guys as many different little techniques as I can think of that might be useful to you. But lot of flexibility, a lot of ways to do this. And I'm not like the strongest like paintery colorist that there is. What I tend to do is start with a certain start like this usually, and then if I want to get to the point where I'm painting completely, I'll sometimes flatten it all to one layer and just paint on one layer at that point. But for this kind of thing, I'm probably not going to worry about it. I don't like this purple color on the blue, and so I'm going to tint that a little bit more toward blue. And grab that color. And for the blue stuff, I'm going to use that color. Now, I don't know if this is actually a great color for this either. But again, this is all kind of rough today for the sake of time. It's too saturated. Let's desaturate it. But this to me is like is the closest to like you know a traditional way of doing this is just to throw the colors around. If you're new to digital art and you just want to paint stuff like you would in a coloring book, this is a good style for that. But I'm using a lot of the same, you know, places the shadows were and stuff. I'm not like reinventing the wheel there or anything. And again, not crazy about that blue, the way that it's mixing with this brown. And so open up my hue saturation, be like, I like that a little bit better, a little bit warmer. Alt click that to grab whatever color that is, that layer. Alt click the eyeball, will isolate it. And now I've got that color, and I can go in here and throw all these colors around. And I know this is all going pretty fast. If I've completely lost anybody, let me know in the chat, and I will try to explain what's going on. And again, I'm trying to get this done in a reasonable amount of time so that we're not here all day. Actually, today I can't stick around much later than usual, so which is usually around 12, maybe 1 o'clock today, Central. We'll see what happens. Let's see. I think this shadow wraps around his head a little too much. Should be more in the front. I used to wonder as a kid. I was a huge fan of Sal Buscema. Is that how you say his last name? He was drawing Spectacular when I was in high school, and sometimes they were just getting to where they were doing coloring that wasn't completely flat, and they would put that shadow on the forehead, you know, as because of what happens when the light's behind you. And always as a kid, I remember looking at that going, what is that? What is that coming from? I don't get that. So it's kind of like cut and grab it with a smaller brush. It's not really I'm not using a lasso here at all that's the biggest difference, is I'm painting in what's here with the brush. And this is another thing, like I could spend 5 minutes doing this on here, and I could spend 5 hours on this painting all this stuff. There's a lot of ways to make this work. Excuse me. And that's how pretty that looks by itself. That's all the colors so far. All of the shadows anyway. And then so like as far as shadows goes, like that kind of like this works. And this would be like, I'm gonna change this in here real quick. I'm not really being too careful. If I was actually, you know, getting paid for this, I would be a lot more detailed with some of this stuff. But I'm also trying to get this done in a relatively short period of time. Where are we at? So that looks all pretty good. So I would probably, if I were doing this on a page, I would label this as shadows, make another layer for highlights. And if you're wondering where these layers are just popping out of nowhere, it's because I have a action that creates hard light layers, because I use them all the time. So I just hit a button and it creates a hard light layer and labels it HL. So I'm going to pick, we'll start with that red base color, but I want to lean it a little bit orange, because to me, why is this not coloring? Not bright enough? What am I doing wrong? There we go. Something like that. Okay. This brush is pressure sensitive also, if you're wondering like how I'm able to get the different opacities and whatnot. I'm also not quite as worried about, you know, I'm not treating every area equally. You know, places like his face, I would spend a lot more time on than, say, his feet, for example. You know, and that's another way to control just the level of contrast and the level of detail. It's like that's also a weapon in your storytelling arsenal. Because even things like, I mean, this is a really simple page. It's not like I need to like pull the reader's eye anywhere or whatever. But even on this, I am thinking about that to the so that I end up with more contrast, brighter colors, that sort of thing, you know, near the top half of this drawing, like in his head and shoulders and that kind of thing. Um, it does make a difference. I'm so happy I can finally understand how these styles work. Thank you so much for this. Yeah, no problem. So it's better to add a layer than keep going on one. So you could, all right. So you could absolutely do this on one layer. Again, like there are no rules. If you're looking at this and going, well, I wish I would do that, we'll do that. It doesn't matter. But I will say, the reason that I am keeping the shadows separate from the light is because I want to be able to independently adjust those. Okay. Because I'm going to relabel this light. And in the same vein I did before, I can come in here and change my shadow colors around to all sorts of different options. I can make them more saturated. I can make them darker. I can make them lighter. You know, this is like murder Spider-Man. He's gonna kill you. Um, but no, like these are things that I can independently shift around. You know, and if the lights were also on that layer, then I would be adjusting the lights with it, which it's likely not going to work. You know, and so with this, I can go to my lights. I can shift the color of those around, you know, and so it's just a way to keep things separate, you know. Like I tend to use a different layer for each type of light or each light source, depends on the page. I did a hatchet job coloring this. I knew I should have waited for you to color it first. You're good, Dennis. You're good. I'm sure it's fine. How do you pick your color for using hard light? I talked about that a little bit earlier, but yeah, it depends. If you want a brighter color, you go above 50% gray. If you want a darker color, you go down. So if I do this, it's a shadow. If I do this, it's a highlight. Oh, you can't see that very well, but you know, it depends on whether or not you are at the 50% point, whether or not it will lighten or darken. Now, of course, like in this case, there's some really bright colors on this, and so even going into the deep saturated side, it's still adding value. Like that's actually not as bright as this side, you know. Going across, this is getting darker, okay? So a lot of times when you're adding saturation, you're actually adding a value change too. And so, you know, don't forget about that. You thought you were making too many layers? No, there's never too many layers. I want to show you guys something real quick, tangent, about layers. I'm going to show you guys two PSD files from two different colorists that are both some of the best working today. And I want you guys to see the difference. Where is, hold on a second. Navigation pane. I think this is what this is. Yeah, okay. So years and years ago, Marta Gracia made a bunch of his pages available for download. This is his entire layer stack, okay? And all of his pages look like this. There are very few have any more layers than this. You got the flats on a layer on their own. You got the line art. You've got the rendering. Some special effects on top. And that's an extra layer. That's it. That's all you have to do. If you want to color like that, you can color on one layer. Basically, it's all, everything is there. And in the same token, I want to show you guys a page from Tamara Bond Villain, who is another amazing colorist, who sent this to me years ago, and I want to show you someone else that is also, you know, working at that level. Marvel, DC books, big time colorist. And this is her layer stack. Okay. It keeps going. So the answer is, which is the best way to do it, is it depends. It depends on what you want. So I don't know. There's probably 50 layers over there. I'm somewhere in the middle. So there is no right way. How do you feel about feathering selections when doing cuts and grads? Totally cool. If you want to do that, if you want softer edges, that's the way to go. What is the difference in file size between those? I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't. I need to put those in a folder like with each other. I'm gonna have to look. I have to look them both up again. But no, I don't know. They're both probably, you know, could be a few hundred megs easy. Must have a hell of a computer. I don't know. I don't think that stuff makes as much difference as it used to. I mean, computers are all pretty dang fast, you know? So, but yeah, I don't know if it makes that much difference. But yeah, this kind of style is much more easy for a lot of people to wrap their head around, because it's just like, this kind of feels like, you know, painting on a canvas or whatever, you know. And don't be afraid that if you want to come in here and do a few little selections or something along with it, like there's no rules whatsoever about that. None at all. None at all. I'm just trying to make this up look a little bit interesting. And also, I'm fast. I just if you're new here, like, and even among colorists, I am a fast colorist. So when you see this and you're like, dude, this would take me 4 hours, that is perfectly normal. I'm the one that's weird. Excuse me. But yeah, any questions so far? Does this all make sense? You guys with me? This has been a fun stream. I'm gonna have to try to do more of these, like, streams with a purpose, other than color the page in front of me. Yeah, but I've had a good time today. And again, I want to thank Dave. I don't know if he's still here or not, but I want to thank David for allowing me to do this for you guys. I've gone a full 2 hours without plugging this at all because I'm terrible at this sort of thing. But I am running a Black Friday sale right now. The link is in the description. All of my coloring courses. There's a big bundle. It's normally like $150 for like 9 courses. It's 60% off right now. You can get it for every course I've ever made for $60. Okay, so this is $2 a minute or something. Okay, there's like 30 hours, 30 plus. It's at least 30 hours of crap. And if you are new here and you're like, how does this is all too fast for me? I need somebody to like walk me through this step by step. Then check the links in the description. And there are people here that have taken those courses that can tell you if they're any good or not. I won't try to do any more of a hard pitch on that. I am here. Thank you for doing this picture. Thank you, David. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, this whole thing was one big a scam to get to tell you guys about my sale. No, it's been running for a while. I'm horrible at remembering to like mention this stuff, and I hate like the YouTube meta, as they call it, I guess, of just all of that. Ask them to click this. Ask them to click this. All the YouTube pros are telling me you need to ask them to do stuff more. And I'm like, I don't want to. Leave me alone. I was a 90-pound weakling before I took Kurt's courses. Exactly. And now Jason is like deadlifting so much. Yeah, this is why, like, it's part of the reason why I decided to do this particular stream with this is because I knew that like anything that I did on this is gonna look cool. So yeah, I'm happy with all this stuff. Seems to work pretty well. What angle do I want that to be at? Let's do it that way, maybe. Now, the other thing, and again, for the sake of time, I'm going to try to condense this a little bit. I am also going to show you guys a couple of tricks on how I would start kind of dressing this up with a little bit more detail in the colors. But let me make sure this is all good first. And the other thing here that I haven't really had a chance to talk about, and this is a bit of a tangent, it's not really a style discussion, but I want to explain what this right here is. Because a lot of, I think a lot of colorists, if you haven't studied light behavior, it can be confusing what you're actually seeing on that little rim around there. So I want to talk about this after I color this in here. You see how that pretty much immediately made that arm feel like it's got more form? It's because we now have it's lighting from both sides. But what he's drawing in here is something, it's based on something called, it's a technical term, is called the Fresnel effect. F-R-E-S-N-E-L, I believe it's French. It's called the Fresnel effect. And what it does, a lot of people will see this and think, oh, well, that's a rim light. And it kind of is a rim light, but I want you to understand why you'll see this in places that don't have strong, rim light situations. When you're looking at a sphere, and I don't think I have an old trackball. This sphere, anything you have that's reflective is going to reflect everything all the way around it. Okay, when you're looking at this, can I blow this up for a second? Hold on. I'm so small on the screen. You guys are going to get... Why does that look that way? This is all very dramatic. But anyway, you can see enough here, I guess. So, but anyway, this little ball is highly, highly reflective. And if I have a light source behind it, my phone's not in here. This is a hard thing to try to explain. Somebody probably do a better job than I could, but it's reflecting the light all the way around the room. Okay, like you can see my light on this side. You can see my little light even way over there. It's almost behind me. It's almost directly beside me. Like my arm is straight out. You can still see that reflection there because it's reflecting from that light off the ball into the camera. Okay, so the more light you have behind a round surface, it's all going to reflect along that little edge there. Okay, so all the light that is directly behind him. Now again, there's no environment here, but I'm trying to make this make sense. All the light that is coming from behind and that wraps like all the way around the back side of him is reflected in that little rim light right there. And if you look up the Fresnel effect, you'll probably find, I did a video on it a while back, years ago, I think. But you're seeing like the sum total of all that reflected light in that cylinder there, what is effectively his arm. You know what I mean? So that's why very often you will see it even on, and I kind of missed it down here, even on this underside of his arm here. You can see a little bit of that there. And I don't think, and he's here so we can ask. That's not normally something I can do. But, you know, this is Dave indicating that this is a round object that has form. And so we're able to see the light from both sides of it. Does that make sense? I'm not big on like very technical, you know, theoretical discussions. I tend to like really dumb things down for myself. So I don't know if that made any sense or not. But anyway. I feel like we could do this all day. But yeah, I could get into all this detail forever. But that was Crystal. Awesome. All right. I'm gonna turn my fan on, or my AC on. All right. Let's make sure y'all can see again. I have to admit, I picked it up from artists I like and learned the theory much, much later. Yeah, so I spent, like, I've only been a full-time freelancer. This month actually marks my 3rd year. I had a day job, a software company for a long time. And I've spent the first 2 years studying light like it was my job for the first time, like really digging into the science of it, and I find it fascinating. But anyway, I bought the course. I'm a digital painter. I love the way you explain color. This will be very helpful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You can't hear me? Can you guys not hear me? Is there a problem? Okay. Chris can hear me, so that means that I think I'm okay. So, I mean, to me, like, again, like, if this were a Marvel book and the editors, you know, maybe they like this, maybe they want more detail, I don't know. But we could keep pushing this with all sorts of little details. I think this is about a good point to stop with this one. I mean, to me, this almost feels like too much. Like I'm definitely a fan of, like, you know, simple colors. So, but yeah, Nolan, turn your speakers up or something, man. I don't know. Sorry. Refresh maybe. F5. I don't know. So so we've covered flat, and we've covered cell shaded, cut and grad, painterly, which is what I would call this, just brushy stuff. The last one that I want to talk about is what I would do if I were gonna paint this. Okay, now this is the part where I probably, again, I'm looking at this. I don't want you guys to look at this and think that I'm making decisions today based on, you know, what I would do if this was in a comic book. Like, I'm using this as a way of showing you guys some concepts that hopefully also looks good and works. I would not paint over any of these lines very much if that's what I was hired to do as a colorist. You know, I would allow the lines to do the heavy lifting, embellish where I can, and kind of leave it at that. But for the sake of this lesson, I want to do some stuff over the top of the lines on this, and do some more of like a kind of like a fully painted kind of look. And I don't know how much time I'm going to have to go into detail on this. I'm going to build off of this that's already here, and see what all we can come up with. It's just a way of getting a lot of color detail in there without hopefully completely ruining it. So anyway, I love all the helpful advice. You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, yeah. So what I'm going to do, I think, is Buenos dias to you too. Is it Leon or Lion? I don't know. I want to be sure. So if I was gonna like paint this, I would, and say if I wanted to treat this as if the final product is going to be painted, I would work with obviously what's here, like shadow wise. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel or step on any of that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna start just adding detail to this and explaining what I'm doing, and we'll do that until I'm tired of doing it, and then we'll call it for today. So one, I don't have any color on his eyes. They should be in shadow. And I'm going to zoom up a little bit. I really haven't been very zoomed up. That's another thing that I recommend is there's really no need to get too crazy with what do you call it? I don't know what I'm saying. Flew out of my head. I've had a hold on, give me just 1 second here. I'm trying to figure something out. It goes way there. And I don't know if this is really suited for this. If I was smart, I would probably just call this right now, but we'll keep going. So I'm going to push this just a little bit further detail-wise. So I'm going to go with a different, slightly darker shadow this time. And I'm going to do this as more of like a... I'm going to just label this AO, I think, for ambient occlusion. Thank you for doing these streams. Very helpful. Thank you very much. Kurt's tutorial on how to color and Procreate saved my ass. Very funny. Good. I'm glad it was useful. So with this, I'm just going to start adding like some deeper shadows, more colors, more sense of form here, hopefully. And because Dave is a pro, to me, this is, I can almost turn my brain off for this part usually, especially when the forms are this strong. It's like I don't have to like try to fudge a shadow or whatever. It's like everything's right here. I can see what shapes they are. It makes my job very, very easy, and I'm jealous of all of Dave's colorist. So why is nothing coming out of this brush? There we go. But anyway, what do you guys any questions, comments, concerns about anything? It doesn't have to be about this. This is going to take a little bit to kind of dress all this up a little bit more. And so feel free to ask questions about anything, and I'll be happy to answer. Or if you need me to stop and describe what's happening, I can do that too. But I'm kind of trying to blend some of this, the hatching and stuff he's done with what's in the inks and what's in the colors, and blending it all. And I tend to, and not everybody has the same philosophy, I don't think, but I a lot of times I tend to try to color in a way that, like, if this guy was coloring himself, what would he do? Like I want it to fit that well, you know? And maybe, I've had people tell me before that, that some of the choices, you know, were, can get too safe, you know what I mean? And I probably have a little bit of that, maybe. But, I do try to, I try to make it look like it's one coherent thing, you know? As far as like other people coloring this drawing, you guys have to ask Mr. David about that. I don't know. You did you agree when starting to learn color that you should limit your palette? Do you agree when starting to learn color probably you should limit your palette? It's a good way to start, yeah, for sure. I don't know if yeah, I do recommend that as a good place to start. Because if you can figure it out, if you can get a thing to work with 2 or 3 colors, then it makes it a whole lot easier to you know, start adding more later. And it also kind of forces you to think more simply about whatever it is you're looking at. Sorry, I'm just kind of randomly throwing around things I'm forgetting to do too. And yeah, like at this point, like I said, I'm already fighting instincts to like leave this alone. So I guess I want to be clear that like this is more for demonstration purposes than what I would normally do. But I think it's working. I think it works all right. And I'm also like taking some of these light colors and smoothing this stuff out a little bit more. And basically just trying not to leave much in the way of like flat gradients, basically. I can make the pencils available, or if you like, you can do that too. All right, well, here's what I'll do. Since I've already adjusted these inks, and let me do this. Let's see, let's save. Layer information won't be saved. You want to proceed? Yes. Let's see if this works. Give me a second here. I'll post a link in the description. Not the description, but the I probably should put it in the description. Otherwise, it's gonna scroll by and everybody's gonna miss it. Where is it? David Finch. There we go. All right, so in the description, link to drawing. It should be updated now. So you guys can grab this if you want. And thank you, David, for doing that. That's very cool. So yeah, you guys can play around that now if you want to. This is a bit off topic, but sometimes I feel Sometimes I've lost it. I see some illustrators do a kind of saturated color and transitions between light and shadow. Do you have a name for it or how you do it? Yes. There is a. I mean, there's a couple of ways that happens. It happens with skin or anything that has anything below the surface. You also get it. There's a light principle that will sometimes condense a color transition that will make it appear to be more saturated. There's a couple of different little things that'll happen there, but often you will see it in the transitions between light and shadow more than anywhere else. So a lot of times what I will do is I'll wait until the end and then use something like an overlay layer or something that tends to only affect more the midtones, and do something like that, and that way it doesn't. I've got that nice transition without it really affecting the values at all, like all the rendering I've already put in, and that's subtle. It's very subtle, but it makes a really big difference in how it looks, subsurface scattering, right, is like the technical term for that kind of thing. But anyway, but yeah, that's since I added that to his head, you can see like his feet and hands and all this other stuff seem like relatively duller just because of that one little bit there, and so we'll throw that around there in a little bit, and that's all kind of back up to the same level of saturation, something like that. But yeah, you can do that. That's the thing. I don't necessarily do every lighting concept on every single drawing, but for the sake of the day, why not? Anyway, where was I with my shadows here? Let's get back. I want to make sure I think I've got everything that I wanted to do. I still haven't really detailed this web yet, and I feel like he's added a lot of detail. People always ask, I get a lot of questions about, well, how do you know how much detail to add or how not to add or whatever, and I try to take the clues from the line art. Like I'm not a big fan of like coloring way past the level of detail that's in the line art personally. Like as if again, there's varying schools of thought on that, but for example, in this web, there's a lot of detail in this web. You can see every little strand. You can see the parts that are wrapping around. Like, that's a lot of work to get that in there. And if I just leave this like this, I mean, it works. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But he spent the time to detail that to that level. Like, I feel like I should match that. It's like, so I always try to do it that way. And again, this is all going to be kind of quick. I'm not trying to spend hours all day doing this today. So I'm just going to throw around a few little sharp highlights here and there, and it doesn't take much. And this will start to really feel like it's got a lot more depth to these things, and just by throwing around a few little highlights here and there. This is Ron Chan's pencil from his Gumroad. I think it's a free brush. So, anyway, hopefully that helps. Marco Bucci did do a good video on that. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, if you want to learn about that saturation in between the transitions, Marco has a much, much stronger explanation on his channel. And just generally, go follow him. Subscribe to his channel. If you want to learn about color and you're not following Marco Bucci, you're doing it wrong. He and I, we have very different styles and ways of, but we think about color very similarly. And so he's a good match for people that follow me and understand how I understand color already. And you want to get more about where my process came from, watch his channel. What is your opinion on using color holds for line art? I've been using it often, but I feel pure black might be better. It's totally a personal preference. It depends on the style, depends on the line art, whether I do it or not. It's like with something like this, you know, I'm probably not gonna, you know, do a whole lot in the way of line changes. I mean, this all kind of works the way that it is. But you know, if you decided, hey, I want to change the color of this web or something, it's like totally up to you. There's no rules. I do it depending on the project. It all depends on the context. Like I don't have like here's a drawing. Okay, step 1 I do this. Step 2 I do this. Like I really try to approach everything. I mean, of course I have a process, but each one I try not to fall into doing the same thing. Okay, and now it's time for step this, and now I do this. Like I don't want to be that formulaic with it, you know. Have I seen what Greg Smallwood is doing on Human Target? Yes, I have. It's unbelievable. It's just gorgeous. I talked about that on a stream last week, I think. Anyway. I'm already starting to feel like I'm going to be overworking this thing. And so I don't know if I really want to keep... if I want to keep going or not with the detail on this, because yeah, we could spend a while doing all of this stuff. Oh, we could switch back to my other brush. This video could double as one of those, like, here's color in 5 different levels or whatever. There's so many of those kind of videos. Yeah, we're gonna call this style more detail than I feel is necessary. But why not? We're all here. Apologies, Dave, for just completely overcooking this today. And I'm as we're going around his head, I'm shortening all of these little lines here because it's wrapping around. It's getting less and less light. And there would also be, if we want to get really technical with it, this stuff looks kind of shiny to me. All right, this blue. I'm not saying shiny, but it's not like too. What's the word I'm looking for? It's reflective, I would say. It would definitely reflect onto his helmet a little bit. So maybe some light comes in at like this angle and then bounces up, and so you might have some of that blue light up in here. Actually, let me switch to a little bit bigger brush. And basically, I'm looking for any place that like is just flat. Like if there's not at least some kind of little gradient going on, then you know. I learned that from Boro Dante. That's another channel. I promote everybody else more than my own channel, but there's a guy named Boro CG is his channel. I'll put the name of it down there. But he always, when he's a digital painter on YouTube. I learned a ton of stuff from digital painters on YouTube, have nothing to do with painting, or nothing to do with comics, I should say. I've learned most of what I've learned from people that have nothing to do with comic books. So, but Boro Dante, on his channel, he very often talks about what that when you have form of any kind, that if you have a flat surface, like your brain, and it's a flat color, like your brain wants to say this is like a flat thing. It doesn't give it form. And so anywhere where there is, a flat area of color, like that shadow color on his face, by adding just a little bit of this bounce light and some of this of just what's floating around, it immediately makes his head seem more like, like you can put your hands on it, like you can feel it, And anyway, it would be cool to think of his mask like Red Hood's and goes off and on like Iron Man's. Yeah, I mean, I'm really out of the loop on Spider-Man at the moment. I don't know what's going on with him. I know his suit is made of stuff. Like, I don't know. I kind of miss old Spidey when he was just running around in spandex. But anyway, how fancy do we want to get with this today? I'm just gonna keep adding detail until Dave sends somebody to knock me out. For me, colors are overdone when the line art gets lost. That's not remotely happening. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to catch up in the chat here a little bit. Yeah, go subscribe to Marco Bucci's videos too. Yeah. All right. But so maybe some of this red reflects up in here. I don't know. This is why I like hard light. I pick that red color, and what comes out? Purple, which is exactly what you would get on this blue. This is why I like hard light mode, people. I feel like it's cheating sometimes. It's like, how did you decide on that purple? It's just perfect. It's like, I am smart. That's why. I still have Painterly on the screen. Oh yeah, I do. This is let's change this to I don't know, too much detail. No, I'll say detailed. We'll leave it at that. I don't know what this is anymore. This is getting into like painty stuff, which I don't. I wish that I had time to paint stuff with this level of detail all the time. It would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm getting to that point where it's like, yeah, starting to struggle to find big broad things to do to this, and now we're just at the stage where who knows when we stop. Again, like throwing in like one like random one that's brighter than the rest of them really helps to sell the idea that these things are all at slightly different angles, because you can tell the way he's drawn it in here, like this is not like smooth spandex. Like this stuff has some teeth to it. Like these are big chunky scales. So like so yeah, we could spend the rest of this stream probably detailing scales. Curtly, yeah. Overcooked? No, yeah. That did run across my head. I'm like, I was gonna type out. Yeah, overdone. Looks amazing, spectacular, and all other spider-related adjectives. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am set up well here. I am set up. I'm like I said. This feels a little bit like cheating to me too. It's like, well, the drawing's awesome. The forms are all very solid. So this all becomes pretty this part, like I said, for me is like I can totally just like zone out, and this is the fun stuff. Yeah, I'm reaching my limits of what I think I am adding to this at this point. So what do you guys think? Questions, comments, concerns? I don't mind doing a little bit of a Q&A or something before I wrap this up today, because I know there's I really appreciate everybody coming today. This is a lot of people for me, so I appreciate it. Are you gonna do anything on the star on the chest? I thought about it. I'm leaning toward no. I mean, I guess I probably should do something, right? Maybe we can do like really subtle. Like maybe there's some type of like it's beveled or something. I don't know. I don't really see that in the drawing, but so I don't want to go too nuts or anything, but why not? Something like that, maybe. And actually, it's kind of all at the wrong angle. You would see that stuff more. That's why I didn't color it. It's like I like how iconic it looks the way that it is, but you probably could do something like that, maybe. I don't know. I would probably leave it pretty simple though. I don't want to like cut into this with like shapes and stuff like and have it break up the star. I mean, you know, especially if this is Spidey meshed with Cap, you know, that star is one of the few things here that tells, other than the shield, obviously, that star is something that tells us who it is. So, you know, I don't think I want to mess with it very much. It would be cool if like I don't really do anything with the spider, because it's just black lines, but like, but yeah, you could, you could, well, I don't know, it depends. I guess if you wanted to, and this starts to get over the lines, of course, and it's not necessarily what I think I would do, but I'm wondering if we did something like, I'm thinking about like the PS4 Spidey costume, and I'm wondering if I could do this without it looking horrible. Have like another layer of like some kind of raised white texture or something on that. I don't know. I want to see what this looks like anyway. This might change the overall feeling of that area too much, but I like the idea of that coming forward a little bit, though. Yeah, like this isn't terrible. You kind of lose. It's kind of harder to see, though. I don't know. Yeah, like at this point, I'm kind of goofing around. How do artists like Jordi Belair do simple color with large flat that seem detailed like Nightwing or Wonder Girl? You're asking how they do flat colors? I kind of started with that. Like once I'm done today and this airs, I think you'll be able to go back and watch the beginning. But just so I don't want to make sure nobody's hanging out to see if I'm going to color this anymore. I think I do think I'm wrapped up with this for now. So I appreciate everybody watching, but I'll stick around and answer questions, but for a little while. But if you're here to watch more coloring, I think I'm good with this. I think I'm okay with it. But yeah, I don't quite follow your question, Nolan. Maybe try asking me a different way. Or go back and watch if you just want to see the flat thing. What is your strongest non-comics influence? James Gurney. No question. James Gurney's book Color and Light pretty much changed my life. I recommend it all the time. If you Google or search for books on my channel, you'll find one video about books, and his book is mentioned in there. Looks really good, Kurt. Thank you, Eric Grove Art. I appreciate that very much. Let's see. Great work. Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna have to figure out without coloring this, without copying your scheme. Yeah, you can't do any of the styles that I did. That's the rule. Let's see. Looks amazing, no pun intended. Thank you, Dark Bastion. I would like to someday. Hold on. Oh, I would like to someday ink professional comics or color some like you, but I'm not sure who to contact or where to figure that out. Yeah, you call the comics industry hotline and tell them you're looking for. No, God, somebody's gonna think there's a hotline now. No, there's not. It doesn't matter what country you live in. I don't think. How I got into comics and how anybody gets into comics is all very specific to that person. So like, let me make this bigger so you guys can see while I'm yammering. Why is that not? Oh, sorry, I'm not trying to give you guys like vertigo over here. I'm trying to blow this up a little bit. At least have something to look at while I'm yakking. But no, the advice I give everybody is always the same. Start small. Like, comics is a very small industry. There are, if you're talking about, you want to color books, for some company you've heard of, you still have to start somewhere else. You gotta start small. Find Facebook groups, subreddits, wherever kids hang out on the internet these days. I don't know. And find a partner, make a 4-page story. Make a 6-page story. And then find someone else, make another one, or make another one with your friend. Like, start small, start very small, because one, you have a lot of practice to do. You're not going to be good out of the gate. Nobody is. Well, maybe I say nobody. I certainly wasn't. A lot of people aren't. You have to get the work done. Like, there's no way to practice without doing it. And so you've got to get pages done, okay? It doesn't matter if you're getting paid for them early on. To me, personally, honestly, and people have different opinions about that. And I'm not talking about work for free and then, for a Kickstarter or something. But just for like random pitches, anthologies, shorts, whatever. Get with some people that are in the same boat you are, okay? The same. I like to consider them like graduating classes or something. It's like, find a class, find a writer you like, find an artist you want to color. If you're a writer, find an artist you want to work with. If you're a letterer, find some art, whatever. It's like, find someone that you can come up with together, okay? Because you're going to motivate each other. You're going to get better together. And you don't have to marry the person, you can jump, whatever. But it's like, early on, it's more important to just get the work done. And then once you've got something done, you are now head and shoulders above an entire group of people that want to make comic books without doing any of the work. Okay? There's a lot of people in this industry, not in the industry, they're not in the industry, that want to be in the industry is what I found. They want their name on the cover of a book. And then you find out that it's actually work to make that happen. and you lose about half these people. Okay. So there's a lot of people that want to do this that aren't willing to put in the work. And so if you finish one thing, you now have a portfolio piece that will put you ahead of everybody else, you know? So there you go. I mean, that's how it worked for me. Is you do a little bit of work, you do a little more work. Eventually somebody says, hey, there's this guy I worked with, he can color. Cool. And then you get a gig. And then later down the line, somebody's like, hey, we need a colorist. Remember that guy we did that like 2-page thing with? He was okay. He wasn't a dick. Yeah, let's hire him again. Like, that's been my entire career. Okay. So that's my 2 cents on that, for what it's worth. Let's see. Thanks for the stream and all the explanations. Thank you, Angela. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Someone once cracks the joke on my course of everyone who gets into comics has a unique backstory. It's not a joke. It's the truth. Like, it's, you could ask me, you could ask Dave, you could ask any number of people, and we're all going to have completely different stories about, you know, how we got in. There's not like a formula, you know, for breaking in. You know, once you're in, you got to stay in. That's a whole other story. That's a whole other discussion, you know. So anyway, I've noticed that most of my favorite artists are ones who don't have a ton of rendering and still find they have a ton of interest. How do you go minimalist? Well, I guess. Okay, so a lot of that depends on the line art, in my opinion. Like, it really does. Like, there are certain types of line art, and this is not an easy thing to like quantify. It's like, oh, if the line art does this, then this is how you color. But generally speaking, disclaimering myself, all that stuff, there's some line art that's better suited for that kind of just flat coloring. It doesn't need rendering. If it's on the cartoony side, if it's, you know, not even just that. There's some stuff's not cartoony at all that works flat. But that's all just a choice that colorist is making, you know, probably with the artist. You know, they're figuring out. It's like if somebody hires Rico Renzi, they hire him because he's Rico Renzi. They want that, like, you know, he has these, like, you know, they just like circus, funhouse, festival colors, just crazy saturated colors and things that I can't make work together. You know, it's like you're hiring Rico for Rico. You should be, hopefully, you know. And so he's going to come in and do Rico things, you know. But as far as going minimalist, a lot of it depends on whether the line art is, I would say, compatible with that style of coloring. And then at that point, the other thing I want to kind of warn against is that I think a lot of beginners also assume that means that, like, oh, this is an easy way to color. And I would say it's the exact opposite. Like, if you're doing a book and the colors are all flat, you are severely limited in your color choices, you know? If I want to make, and I'll give you like a quick example. Like, if I'm coloring this, and I've got a guy standing here, and I want him to, you know, stand out against that thing. Okay. Well, if I can render and stuff, I can like throw, like, you know, a highlight on one side and like, oh, that's all it takes, like that, you know, or whatever. It's like, it doesn't take very much to get something to come forward when you can render, because, you know, you can add light, you can add shadow, you can add different things. But when the colors are flat, you only have what's around it and the object itself. And so you've got to think in terms of, well, how am I going to make the foreground stand out from the background? You know, how am I going to make all these elements, you know, work together? And you're very limited on your options, you know, because you're only doing one color, you know, per whatever. So a lot of this stuff is, the color choices themselves become much more important when you're doing flat coloring. Because if you're doing flat coloring and everything looks like just straight up local color, like there's no tint to it or at all, it's all just whatever color it is, then like chances are it's going to look kind of boring, you know. And so don't think that flat coloring is some kind of like easy way out of I'm not saying you're saying that, but I just wanted to be clear. Like, don't look at minimalist as also easy. You know, I think a lot of people make that mistake. I mean, it's technically simpler, but it doesn't mean it's easier from a color standpoint. Like, you've still got a lot of work to do. So, of course, thank you to Dave and the whole flock down on the farm. Yes, yeah, I've thanked Dave already a couple times, but yes, thank him again. Thank you for your time in the stream. It's been helpful. Yes, thank you. Any other questions before I wrap this up? Going once. This has been a lot of fun. You guys want to do more stuff like this? I also, it's off topic, but I've got a friend of mine that's an artist named Rando that is going to be joining me on a stream here pretty soon. He's a friend of mine from Mobile. He does a lot of work for Inverse Press. He's a very funny guy, very entertaining. And he's going to be probably maybe next week. We're trying to get him on. Have you ever used GIMP? I have not. Is the Earth flat? No. We're all. This is a science-based, evidence-based stream. What's better, RGB or CMYK? The question, it's not that simple. Neither one is better than the other. It just depends on what you want to do. A lot of pro colorists work in RGB. A lot of pro colorists work in CMYK. They all end up in CMYK at the end anyway. It doesn't really matter. I'd watch you every day. Well, I appreciate that, Justin Bourne. Thank you. I stream about once or twice a week on average. This is my regular stream time, by the way. Please, subscribe, like, all that stupid crap, and maybe we'll see you again. Do you want to print it? I don't have any need to print this, no. When's Liana joining you? Soon. Yeah, we have to work that out too. Like, wires have been crossed, and I'm terrible at planning, and so I don't think I gave her enough time the last time. But so no, yeah, Liana Congas is definitely joining too. Also, I'm gonna try to bring in some other personalities, and so that there's at least one personality on here. Awesome stream. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it very much. Again, it's been an honor. I know it sounds cheesy, but like I said, I have a whole collection of Aphrodite JPEGs that are like 200 pixels tall from when I first got on the internet, and like I've been a fan for a long time, and so it's very surreal when on the stream the other day you even knew who I was. So I appreciate that very much, and thank you. I've had a very personally. I've got some personal stuff, family stuff going on right now. This has honestly been one of the hardest weeks of my life, and I'm not going to get into the specifics on it. It's not about my health. I'll say that. But I've had a very, very bad week, and this has it's made me feel a lot better today. So thank you. Oh, I missed my mouth. Oh, by the way, this beard will hold a good gallon of water, by the way. Go to, like, kiss my wife goodnight. She's like, oh, like I got a shower. It just sticks to it. I don't feel it. Your videos help me so much. The comic me and your boyfriend are working on. Well, that's cool. Yeah, if I help at all with your book, you have to list me in the credits. You have to say that I was a special. No, I'm kidding. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Yeah. Also, I get $5 right off the top of every issue. Like, just I'll send you an invoice. Hopefully, we can do more stuff soon. Sorry to hear it's been a tough week. Nothing like artwork to keep you sane. True, absolutely true. But I could sit here all day. I really could. I've got to get some lunch. Thank you all again for coming by. Anytime, David, that you have anything that you're like, this would be cool if somebody colored it, man, send it over. Like, I'm always looking for stuff to like screw around on, do what I did today. So yeah, let me shoot that shot while you're here. But send over whatever, you know, and if I can do it on stream, it's all good for me. Can you show all 5 that you did today? I should. I really should. Yeah. So, yeah, I will real quick in case you weren't here. Let me see if I can figure this out. So all of this is, let me put this in a layer. And we'll call this over painted. What did I do first? So the first was just the flat. It looked like this. I think this is cool. I would buy that book. The second one is was this, which I called just CEL-SHADED, which is basically just flat, you know, flat shadows. You know, no real feathering or rendering or whatever. It's just completely flat. I'll put together like some JPEGs and post something somewhere. And then there was this one, which is like what I called just cut and grad, you know, lasso-y kind of stuff. This looks weird. This is a totally different look. But anyway, this one, I like this one too. Totally different tone, but I like the way it finished. But I do like the way this looks too. Is like sinister or something. I don't know. But yeah, there you go. See you, Jason. Thanks for coming by. Always. Did Paul Rudd deserve to be the sexiest man alive? I mean, he's up there. Paul's a sexy dude and apparently ageless. So, yeah, I guess it's going for him. Love your videos. If I tried to coloring, is because of you. You're a very good, nice guy. Thank you, Lion. Appreciate that very much. This will stay up on YouTube. I am going to leave this up on YouTube. I don't normally leave my streams up, but this one was interesting enough. I'm going to leave it up. And maybe it works. Maybe this works better or something. And if it does, then I'll keep doing this. We'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you all again. Thank you. Check the links in the description if you want to help me out. Subscribe, like, stupid, all this stuff. And see you guys in the next one. Be good. Stay safe.